Hi, and welcome to this video. Today I'll be talking about the other EQ that you can use. On the last video, I've spoken how you can train your ears to be a better frequency detector when doing a mix by doing a 5-minute workout a day. But now there's a different EQ that you can use called the dynamic EQ. So on this video, I'll be talking about how you can use it and when should you use it and what is the difference. My name is Sylvain Rochon from HomeStudioLogic.com and I'm here to help. All right, so let me talk to you about the difference between the dynamic EQ and the regular EQ. So first off, I'm just going to pull up the FabFilter EQ because this EQ is wonderful because you have both inside the same plugin. Unfortunately, Logic's got a very good EQ, which I've used in the previous video, but they don't have a dynamic EQ per se. They do have a multi-compressor that you can use for the same, to get the same results. But for me, I prefer using a dynamic EQ when I want to control harsh frequencies without lowering down using just a regular EQ. And let me explain. So I've got this song here, which there's a guitar. Right now, this is a static mix, so it doesn't have any plugins at all. Those are raw tracks. Now, I'm noticing that the actual guitar, I find it harsh. For me, harsh, it means that in between 2K and 6K, it's got too much. For in my library of words, I call this harsh. In your case, you might call this a different word. It doesn't really matter as long as you understand yourself. So let me press play on this guitar and I'll demonstrate using a regular EQ how to solve the issue and why should you maybe decide to use a dynamic EQ instead. So let's press play and I'll demonstrate. She'll need to be himself no ease to find himself. So that's the frequency that is actually disturbing me. You might feel different because our ears are all different, but I feel that it's got too much going on there and I want to tame it. Now, if I use a regular EQ, I would do this. Himself no ease to find himself behind closed doors alone again. So did you notice that, yes, it's been tamed, but it gave a darker sound to the electric guitar, and maybe, well, in my case, that's not what I want to do. For me, contrary to other mix engineers, some of you like dark guitar, dark distorted guitar. I prefer it to be a little bit brighter. It's a choice because when it's dark and you increase the bass and you've got maybe other elements that is creating the effect in the muddy area, which is in between 100 and 300, where there's a lot of buildup there because bass belongs there. If you have a distorted guitar that is dark, you've got the distorted guitar that's there. You might have some keys, some piano, and for me, for an electric guitar to shine in a mix, it needs to be clear. Well, that's my choice. It might not be yours. So why should I maybe think of using a dynamic EQ in this instance instead of using just a regular EQ? Let me demonstrate. So I'm just going to put it back to 0 dB. Okay, I'm there. Sorry. With the FabFilter Pro, and no, I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not at all. The only reason why I've chosen this one is because I can demonstrate in the same plugin what I'm talking about. You have a choice here to select Make Dynamic. So the difference between the regular EQ and the dynamic is that the dynamic will tame down only the areas that need to be tamed down, meaning that it leaves the actual track intact most of the time. So let me demonstrate. So I create a dynamic EQ, and I'm going to lower down the dynamic right here. It's like putting a compressor on a series of frequencies where the compressor will be lowering down or compressing the frequencies just in between a certain range of frequency. Yes, for sure, you could do that by using a compressor and putting an EQ with high pass and low pass filter to really narrow it down, but you can do that if you want. So accomplishing the same result, but keeping the brightness of the guitar, this is what I would do. So let's press play and listen to the difference. I'm going to turn it off. Let me solo. So it's off. For sure, it's subtle for now because I'm telling this plugin lower it down by 3 dB. But if I want, I can go more. Let's say go to minus 6 dB. So let's listen to it at minus 6 dB. That's the original. Now you can easily control here how you want it to react. You can control the attack and you can control the release as you wish. Maybe you want to increase the attack so that you don't want it to be so dominant, and you want it to react slower so that you get the brightness more. You can control this by using the two knobs right here, which is wonderful. And right now it's on automatic. If you want, you can set it and you can lower it down as you wish. Now, there's another part of this Pro Q4 EQ that is really good as well. Might as well just show it to you while I'm here. So let me remove the dynamic EQ, and there's another one that is called spectral. This one is really fun as well. This one actually just lowers down a frequency that is a problem. Sorry, I tried to say the other word, but I'm French. So this one will lower down only the frequencies that are being bad. So let's press play and see how this one reacts. So you can definitely see that it's only pulling down particular frequencies that are being jerks. And this is really, really a good tool. Now, in another instance where you would want to use a dynamic EQ instead of a standard EQ is on vocals. So I've got my lead vocal right here, which is raw. And let me pull, I'm just going to remove, well, I'm just going to move it right here. All right, so I'm going to remove this. Now, we all know that on vocals, we have a very important problem that we need to deal with, which is sibilant. And yes, you can use a de-esser for sure, but you can also use a dynamic EQ to tame the sibilants down. Now, as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but normally I would use a de-esser almost at the end of my chain. The reason being is that when you mix a vocal and you use compressors and you use maybe different plugins while you're doing your vocal chain, a compressor will actually wake up the sibilant. So if you put your de-esser or your dynamic EQ at the beginning of your vocal chain, and you then add the compressors afterwards, you put yourself in a situation where you'll have sibilant at the end of your chain, even if you have a de-esser on top. So what I prefer doing is I prefer using whatever I use in my vocal chain before I use a de-esser, or in this case, in this example, a dynamic EQ. So let me just throw a compressor right here on this vocal, and I'm gonna. It's of no ease to find himself behind closed doors, alone again, no love anymore, just set him free. All right, so just hold on. It's of no ease. Pretty close. Gain staging, very important. In this particular vocal at this moment, I don't hear any sibilant, but it's very harsh. This is my voice, and my voice, high mids are crazy. And I always have to control them. So this is a very good example, again, how you can use this dynamic EQ while keeping the clarity of your vocal and only taming down the frequencies that are being jerks. So let's use a standard. Let me identify the frequency that is harsh, and then I'll use a regular EQ to bring it down. Then I'll switch it over to the dynamic and show you the difference. It's of no ease. Right there. To find himself behind closed doors, alone again, no love anymore, just set him free. So, yes, I did tame the E. Free. The E is your, it's your worst nightmare. Now, yes, I did tame it down, but you've noticed that the vocal became a little bit darker. And something that you don't want to do is to have a vocal, and mainly the lead vocal, you don't want it to sound dark. You want it to sound bright, but not too bright so that you get ear bleeds, or your listener is doing this like that when they're listening to your song, or doing like that. You don't want that. So let me switch it over to a dynamic EQ instead. All right, so let's turn on the dynamic EQ, and maybe it will bring it to a little bit more than -3 dB. It's of no ease to find himself behind closed doors, alone again, no love anymore. Just set him free, too frail to see. So you're noticing that the vocal is a little bit brighter because we're only taming down the bad frequencies like the mi. Or in this case, with this plugin, you can use the spectral instead. I'm going to clear the dynamic and I'm going to use the spectral. And I'm going to turn it down by same amount of dBs, around 3.5 or maybe 4 dB. And let's press play. It's of no ease to find himself behind closed doors, alone again, no love anymore. Just set him free. So you can really see that the free is around here. The E word is around here, and it's taming down right here and right here. So that's the difference between a regular EQ and a dynamic EQ. Now, the question is, when I'm mixing, when should I use dynamic versus EQ? That's a good question, and really, let me do it on, I'm just going to remove this. I'm just going to bring my EQ to my bass line. The bass is one of the instruments that you have to use dynamic or just standard EQ more. In my book, when I mix, I'm finding that I'm using both of them more on the bass. Why? Because bass, it gets muddy. And depending on how it was recorded, you can have a lot of energy in between 80 hertz to 150 or maybe even 200 hertz. You can have a lot of energy. But then again, in between 100 to 200 hertz, it sounds muddy, but this actually is where the bass lives. And you don't want to tame it down too much because you'll lose that warmth in your song, and you'll lose the bottom end of your song. You don't want that. So that's when a dynamic EQ will come in place. But first, using a standard EQ on the bass line, this is what I would do. Oh, I'm just going to go to the bass. So you can see there's energy right here. You're not really, you can see here that can create an issue. Okay, so I would probably do maybe like that. So you can still hear that nice warm bottom end, but it's not invasive. So if we put the rest of the song, you'll see that it feels very natural. You're hurting him, and you know it. I'm gonna turn it off so you can hear the difference. You must leave. There's just no excuse. No excuse. Now your question is, okay, if I would be using a dynamic EQ, would I get the same result? Yes, you would. But in this case, using a standard EQ really gives me what I'm looking for, because I want to tame it down on a permanent basis. I don't want to tame down only at certain spot when it spikes up. But let's say let's say I want to keep the warmth of that bass. Let's say I have tamed it down and I feel that it needs a bump. I can do another move. I can use this. I can do this like that. And I can use a dynamic EQ like this. And let's listen to what it does.
It's of no ease to find himself behind closed doors, alone again, no love anymore.
That's without it. So you can hear that it's missing a bit of bottom end.
To see, bleeding tears fall down his face. Your love collides with blowing rain.
So it gives you more bottom end without creating muddiness. Another great tip that I'm giving you right now is when you mix a song like this, that's where a dynamic EQ is wonderful. So let's turn that off. Let's remove that. All right. On your bass, on your drum. So you have the bass drum. All right. And you want to make the bass drum normally lives. Let's put an EQ right here and let's see where the bass drum hits. So let's solo that bass drum. Okay. All right. So it's at 4737. All right. Around that area. All right. So let's say 50. Okay. Let's round it up. Remove the EQ. And when I do a mix, I always take my bass, my kick in and my kick out, and I create a stack with Logic. It might be a folder for your case. So it's got a bus number. It's bus number 17. So let me go to the bass right here. Now you want to make sure that your bass doesn't go above your bass drum, because you want to be able to hear your bass drum very clearly, and you want the bass and the bass drum to be almost at the same level so that they play together. So let me show you what I do. So we know it's at 50 hertz or 50 hertz, boom, right there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to sidechain this EQ to bus. It was 17, yeah, 17. Now, what this EQ is actually doing right now, it's listening to the kick drum. So it only will react when the kick drum is present. So I'm going to take this frequency at 50 hertz and I am going to give it a dynamic EQ. I'm going to increase the Q. I want the Q to be narrower, and I want to make sure that every time that the bass drum hits, it brings down the bass so that the bass drum can be heard. So let's press play and listen to I'm just going to solo the bass and the drums so you can see what it's doing. Now you can see the red line is actually the bass drum. You can see that it's louder, like almost a dB, maybe even 2 dB. So maybe you want to increase your dynamic so that they are more aligned. So let's do that. So you can see that it's narrower now, so that the difference between the bass drum and the bass is more or less, matched. Let's say that a regular EQ is a permanent move, so you're taming or you're boosting a certain frequency on a permanent basis. And a dynamic one, it's depending if it's spiking, yes or no. Even if you're lower down or you give it a boost, it's only going to be reacting to spikes. All right, so that's it. If you like content like this, I would suggest you subscribe to my channel. I would suggest you give me a thumbs up if really you liked this information. And please leave me a comment. You can ask questions. I will answer them for sure. I take the time to read all the comments, and I do appreciate everyone that did give me a comment on previous videos. And also, you can go on my website at homestudiologic.com, and if you do /8-step mix, you will get my free guide on 8 steps to a perfect mix. Not perfect, sorry. Perfect doesn't exist, but a great sounding mix. Until then, I'll see you on the next video, and thank you very much for watching.